work with one artboard. If you want to have two going at the same time, that's completely up to you, but I'm going to change the number of artboards to 1. For the profile, I'm going to ultimately be printing this out, so I'm going to choose print. That puts it in CMYK, 300 DPI. It's going to be tabloid, so I want to put that in. And the orientation, I want it to be longer than it is wide. So I'm going to choose a landscape orientation. And I almost always work with a ruler, so if you're used to working with inches, you can change that here. I don't need a bleed for this one because I'm just printing out the letters. I shouldn't have anything going over the edge, so no need for a bleed with this one. So I've got my new document with the artboard. And to bring up my rulers, I'll do Command R, and that'll bring that up so I can see where exactly things are going to be. And one of the first things I'll do, especially since I don't want anything to be too close to the edge and get cut off when it's printed, is I'll drag some lines over from the rulers and set some margins. So if I click and drag from one of the rulers over into the document, I'm just going like ½ an inch from every edge. I can set the margins all the way around the document. And I'm going to go ahead and save this so I don't mess stuff up. Then the next thing I'm going to do is check my layers. So similarly to Photoshop, in Illustrator you have layers that you can work with. So right now I just have this one layer, and this is the layer I'm actually going to place. I'll actually place my new typeface into this. I want to make a new layer below this one so I can bring in my, my alphabet and trace on top of it. So to do that, there's this new layer button on the bottom. I click that and I get a new layer. It automatically puts it on top of layer number 1. So I'm just going to click on it and drag it below. And I'm also going to rename this. I'll name it alphabet. And you'll also notice when you bring this up that you've got some options to lock it and do some other things. So I've got this alphabet layer selected. I'm going to go to File and Place and find the JPEG that I saved out. Take a minute. So it's put it right into my document. Since this is a JPEG, I can't edit anything in here right now, but this is linked to the original file. So if I go to Window and Links and bring up that window, it'll show me the original file, and I can actually go and edit that file if I need to. If I know I'm not going to mess with this at all, that's when I can press this embed button. Anytime you see embed in Illustrator or InDesign, that means it's going to take this image that I just placed and put it into this document. So no matter where I take this Illustrator file, this document is now going to follow it. If I don't embed this, then I have to make sure that the JPEG I placed is with this Illustrator file wherever I go, because otherwise when I open it up, the Illustrator isn't going to know where this JPEG is. But right now I'm going to leave it just as a linked file, and it's in the alphabet layer. I just want to use this to trace on top of, though. I don't want to mess with this at all. So that's where these options come into play. I'm going to double click on the layer again, and there's the option to lock it. When I lock it, that means that I can't move it around unless I go back and unlock it. The other option is to make it a template layer, and what this does is it automatically locks everything, and it also gives you this option to dim this image to whatever opacity you want. It automatically is set at 50. Since there's not a lot of black in this, I'm just going to put it at 75, and that'll dim it just enough so it's easier to trace. So now if I go over to this layer, you can see there's a little lock next to the layer, which means if I try to click on it or select anything, I can't do it. But it also means that this icon to the left of the lock means that it's a template layer and it's not intended to actually work in. But I can always go back and change it by double clicking on the layer and editing those options. So the layer I want to work in is this layer 1. And my goal here is to render my alphabet in vector shapes. So my shapes are all circles. So my first option would be just to use the circle tool or the ellipse tool and guesstimate the shapes of these Cheerios. So I'm going to go over here to the shape tool, choose ellipse, and I want all these shapes to be in black and white. So right now I have a white fill with a black outline, which is fine just for starting off. And I'm just going to summarize all of these shapes as perfect circles. So I'm holding down Shift and dragging to get the perfect circle I want. And maybe I decide that I want all these circles, even though they're not the same, to be the same here. And this is where your translation of the original alphabet really comes into play. Because obviously with the shapes I'm working with, each one is a little bit different. I've got holes in the Cheerios. Maybe with this alphabet I decide I don't want to show the holes. Maybe I want these to be just one color. Come on. And I just want them to appear as dots. That's something I might want to experiment with. Maybe I decide that this is really boring and I decide to cut out holes in the center like Cheerios actually have. So I cut out some holes. And if you guys can remember, there's this Pathfinder tool. Since I've got two shapes placed on one another and I want this hole cut out, to make things easier on myself, I can use this minus front or subtract tool in Pathfinder, and it takes out the center. So now I'm left with a donut shape. So maybe I decide to do this instead. So that's one option. I can be super geometric with it and simplify my shapes to their very simplest form. Maybe I decide I want this to be extremely geometric, so that if I were to draw a line through this, it would be exactly the same on both sides. To do that, I would want to flip one side over and mimic it exactly on the other. So to do that, I can duplicate this side. And to duplicate quickly, you select the objects, hold down Option, and you get this double arrow. And then click and drag. And if I hold down Shift, it moves it along the same axis. So I just move it over, and then I go to Transform, go to that drop-down menu, and go to Flip Horizontal. So it flips it the other way, and I get an exact copy of what I had on the left-hand side. And then for this center one, I'll duplicate it, hold down Shift just like I did before, but move it exactly to the center. So now I have a perfectly structured A made with little simplified donut shapes. But maybe I decide I want to be a little bit more freeform. Maybe I still like the very simplified shapes of the Cheerios, but I want to vary the size a little bit. So that's pretty easy. I'll just hold down Option like I did before to duplicate the circle, hold down Shift, and adjust the size with each piece. So some Cheerios are really small, other ones are bigger, so I'm just changing it according to the size of the original. So that one's a little bit different, obviously. Then for this last one, perhaps I say, to hell with it, I want this to really look like the original Cheerio shape. I don't want to simplify it. That's where things like the pen tool come into play. This would obviously take a bit longer to use, but you'll get closer to the actual shape. So the pen tool allows you to create curves depending on the placement of the points you put down. The easiest way to use it is to put down your points in 90-degree angles of one another. So if I'm trying to make a circle, I'll put down one point at noon, another point at 3 o'clock, pull the handlebars to make that curve. Then make the next one at 6, the next one at 9, and then go back to noon to get that final one. That tends to give you the most crisp, clean circles. But that all depends on how much you want to stick to the original, how much you want to simplify the shape. So right now I really want to get more of the natural Cheerio shape, so I'm just going to kind of go with the flow and not really worry too much about making a really nice circle. Let me change the fill so I can see that better. So anytime I want to kind of adjust the curves, I'll go to a point and click and drag, and I get these handlebars. I can hold down Command to get an arrow. The last arrow tool I was using, so I just switched to the direct selection arrow, and I can click and move the handlebars to get the type of curve I want. So I've got the exterior of the Cheerio. Now I'm going to go inside and do the interior circle. And just like before, I can select both of these and use Pathfinder to cut out the smaller circle, so when that gets filled, it gets the cutout that I want. So I'll just do these with a couple more so you guys can see how this would look. And so in a way, this makes things a little bit more interesting because it's hearkening back to the original material and the fact that not every Cheerio is the same. But like I said, it all just depends on what you're going for. This one's kind of interesting. It's got like a triangular center. Alright, so I've got 3 different shapes there. I'll do the Pathfinder option again and fill these both with black. When I'm finished, or if I just want to see what this is looking like without the original alphabet beneath, I just go back to my layers panel and roll over the template display and click on it to get rid of it so I can see what the letter forms are looking like. So each one of these is quite a bit different. Obviously, working this way, you can move things around a little bit more easily. If you want things more structured, you could just make one shape like I did with the A and just replicate it over and over again. So there's a little bit more leeway with this. The idea here is to take your original and simplify it in a way that if you were to take this final collection of letters and numbers to a type foundry, they would be able to put it into their software and make a new typeface. So you'll want at least the same amount of legibility you had with your original. So that's why I'm saying if you guys haven't already, you need to go ahead and finish your original alphabet, bring it into Illustrator, and start to vectorize it. You can always scale things up or down so that it fits into the space you're working with, but that's pretty much it. Are there questions about starting in Illustrator. Okay.